Hey, I forgot to mention we're doing the Nen Show Book Club today at about 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern time, where we're talking about Dr. Slump, all of it. Go ahead and check the link in the description for Mathwiz's Twitch channel, where it'll be streamed. So yeah, check it out if you've read Dr. Slump. I used to come up with fun ways to start these episodes, but now I'm just drawing blanks. So, blanks as in bullets. There, haha. Yeah. I don't know why that came to mind. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Nen Show Podcast. This is the number 2 episode, the second episode of the Hitman Reborn discussion. This is your host, Craftsdwarf, here with my co-hosts, the co-host Mathwiz. Say hello, Mathwiz.
You know, I feel like this is a common Hitman Reborn take, but I feel like this might be the most I've 180'd on a manga we've read for the Nen Show, between readings. That checks out. And I definitely get what people were saying as far as later material potentially making the first stretch of comedy chapters more interesting in retrospect. Because I feel like I kind of get the vibe of the series now, and it's interesting.
Yeah, which kind of goes into what I was gonna start off with, just initial thoughts on the reading before we get into the discussion. Where it's it just goes right into just being a battle series, and I think even the Kokuyo arc, what's it called? Is that what it was called? Yeah, that's what it was called. The first one with Mukuro, that one, I'm remembering it and had a bit more humor stuff to it, where I feel in the following arc, I'm struggling to remember particularly notable comedy or goofy moments. So it's there's still a transition period, but it's still it's still interesting, and just seeing some of the decisions made and how it worked into being a battle series. Yeah,
I really thought that seeing it transition from comedy to battle, I thought that first arc, while the second one of this reading was definitely the one I preferred by a wide margin, that first arc I thought was really interesting in terms of the craft of it, where I felt a lot of the conflicts were still not necessarily there. Something about the way that it was structured and the cast that arc was working with, where you still had Bianchi in there when she. It kind of feels like the story is kind of figuring out what it's, which of the characters it established is going to be the main core of Suna's group. And yes. I felt that first arc felt like it still had it started in a more sort of comedic light. And I think it was really once we got into that final battle with Rokudo Mukuro that it was that's when I felt it was really starting to okay, now we're really rocketing off into the battle. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but maybe when we get to the chapters proper, I'll have more examples.
Also, son of a fucking bitch. So I forgot. God damn it. So you saying Mukuro's full name reminded me of something. Because I was brushing my teeth. So no, spoilers. I don't know why I'm thinking about spoilers when we're going to discuss
anagram?
The whole. Yeah, because because it's did you realize it too with Chrome, Dokuro Chrome and
Mukuro? Because I was this name is goofy, but why Chrome? And then I thought about it for a second, and I'm Rokudo Mukuro Dokuro Kuromu.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I was brushing my teeth, and I just it clicked in my head, and I was but I forgot about the surname, the Rokudo and Dokuro. I forgot about that part. So, but I just thought about Chrome and Kuromu and then Mukuro. I was fuck. So, yeah, you guys the same realization. But I hadn't thought about the other name before. So thank you for reminding me. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, getting into the reading, starts out with the Kokuyo group causing some trouble. And of course I feel Hibari is such a the perfect lead into a more the battle oriented stuff, because he's more serious, he's involved. Even the gag stuff he was involved in was more other characters responding to him. I felt like Ipin being shy and thinking is attractive, right? Like, so it's like that was Hibari being involved in the comedy, but not for his character, so to speak. So the fact that like here's this one character who just feels a bit more serious than the rest of the cast, so he's the lead-in, and it's like, yeah, it's perfect.
And yeah, this reading, it definitely felt like, I was already thinking that the art was kind of like improving from like the beginning of the series to sort of like by the end of the comedy section, but once it starts like I feel like in particular, well, maybe it's also like the scan quality for the first arc wasn't particularly great, and it maybe kind of muddied a little bit of the the artwork, but like the in particular for me, I felt like the character designs. I mean, I made a tweet about it. Like, character designs are popping off, and by this point, I think, like, maybe this is my fault and not being great at reading manga. I felt like I maybe had some trouble following some of the action, especially like in the first arc. I feel like it got a little better in the second, but just like, yeah, the character designs immediately are just like great, phenomenal.
No, yeah, you did the tweet where it's like, boys. Well, not just like, because, obviously when it, there's the, like Saint Seiya, it was the pretty boys, but this is like, they're like bad boys, they're edgy, they're dark, and they're, but they're still like handsome, and it's like, yeah, it's a mood. Like I'm just scrolling through, and there's the one page with Hibari with his tonfa, and he's like covered in blood, or he's got not covered in blood, but he's got some blood on him, and I don't know, he's just like, because he's it's fucking Pablo pointed out, I think this is the first series that we've discussed that has a female author, but we have talked about series like Bleach that have notable female fan bases who just really like the pretty boys, and this is one of those series, but also by female author, so yeah. Boys.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that this is actually the first manga by a female author that we're reading. Right, but like she's cooking. She knows what she's doing with these character designs.
Because you're right. It's been like fucking how many years of the Nen Show? Like 6, 5, give or take. No, yeah, I don't remember. It's been a while, obviously with breaks and hiatuses in between. But we've read a fair number of series, and yeah, this is still the first one with a female author, so it is what it is.
I think what also impresses me about the character designs is just that like they feel so varied, and like just there aren't many that look like each other. Like they all have some sort of distinctive quality to it. Like I feel like this is a kind of series where like I feel like what people often say with like good character design is if you could like spot them out of a silhouette, which I feel like this series could definitely have that sort of thing where it's like you can just sort of tell by the outline that it's like all the designs are very just striking and good.
Well, what you reminded me of is because like another thing about that I thought about the series while I was reading it is because it's like, I don't know, I can't think of off the top of my head, like I know they exist, but I'm struggling to think of a series that doesn't like, because obviously like there's the the mafia world and the school world, but also like at the end of the day it's ultimately like it's a contemporary setting, but there's no like, I mean, okay, like the bullets are obviously like out there, but there's no shared power system, and a lot of the characters like Gokudera just uses bombs, right? Like that's a normal, like relatively normal, like obviously it's like taken to exaggerated extremes, so the characters all have these very varied fighting styles because there's no shared power system. And I just realized that, and it's like obviously you have some cases like with the like with Suna versus Zanzis, where it's like they both have different takes on the flames, right? But so they have a shared power set in that way and are taking different versions of it. But then like that's not like the whole cast doesn't have that, and it was just a thought I had where it's like the manga is kind of varied in that way because it has this like. It doesn't have a shared power system, even though it's definitely like a battle series, and it takes place, in a contemporary setting. So it's, I don't know, it was something I was thinking of as like, hey, that's kind of neat. Because I can't remember seeing that off the top of my head, at least not recently. So it was cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, some of the students at the school are just getting picked off, and Hibari goes in to deal with it and gets captured. Oh yeah, that's right, and it used the ranking kid, Futa, his list of the strongest students at the school. So that's one of the, ways that the comedy stuff I even brought up as like I guess I suggested it might be a power level thing, but instead it was more just like a their school's being targeted by Mukuro. So yeah.
Oh, right. We also got 2 popularity polls over the course of this reading.
Yep. I'm trying to remember. Did I skip one? Or because I
might be a little ahead.
Yeah, that's fine.
Chapter 65.
No, yeah, you're a little ahead because I'm getting to Gokudera protecting Suna.
Yeah.
And getting fucked over because, Suna's weak. And, which... him being down on himself, and so the arc starts with him being protected by one of his friends, and popularity poll. It's interesting comparing this one to the later one was like a hero and villain poll. Like, I guess they voted for their favorite protagonist and their favorite antagonist. So
yeah.
But this one is just a general popularity poll. I heard that there's a bunch of different themed popular, because we've seen those before, but I heard that there's a bunch of them for the series too. But
okay. Yeah, I thought it was kind of unfortunate that they did the heroes and villains, because I'm like, I want to know who's the most popular character overall. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if it was Mukuro, but also like I don't know how strong the antagonists were at that point that he had to compete against when because usually it's like when you're in the middle of an ongoing arc, those antagonists or characters might not show up yet or be as prominent. So, but yeah, I feel like I wasn't. I mean, I thought it was interesting that Gokudera won the first one, and the main character was second.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, Suna did get first place on the hero side at least. So
once he became a cool boy.
Yeah. Well, see, I wasn't even thinking about that with, I guess, I mean, I would talk about it later, but I'll just talk about it now with, like, the way Mukuro comes back into the story, because I did have the thought of, like, because, I think he was number 1 on the villain poll, on the villain side, so he's a popular character, so there's part of me that thinks, like, maybe, like, the editor or, like, hey, this is a popular character, can we include him in the series more, right? And I don't know, I just thought it was interesting that, like, even if you look at it, like, that way, which is kind of, I guess, more of a almost, I don't want to say cynical, but, like, thinking of, popularity and success over, like, the story, in a sense. Like, it's very easy, I think, to think of, like, an author just including this character because the audience likes them, and even though they have no fucking idea what to do with that character, and they're just, like, issues like that. But the way that Mukuro sort of comes back into the story is so, like, interesting, I guess. Like, it's so off the wall that I'm fine with it, but that's way later. But just on the topic of character popularity, because sure enough, the boys are like, there's Haru. She's 9th place with 400 votes, and it's like, and then Ipin at 12th place with 277 votes, and it's like, it's all the rest is boys. But after Gokudera goes down, Yamamoto comes in, and they sort of cut that conflict off. Oh yeah, I wasn't as annoyed with Reborn this reading because he's mostly there for, like, exposition, and he's, training, and he's not being a cunt. So that's nice.
And yeah, like, obviously, what you were kind of thinking the last time, that's sort of like, now we're getting more genuine moments where it's like, Tsuna isn't just the butt of the joke. He actually has kind of, like, serious moments. Not even of just, like, being cool, but just, like, even his vulnerability, I think, is kind of portrayed in interesting ways. And, like, he is, like, other characters motivate him. Or even Reborn, I feel like, it's less, like, in the first reading, it kind of felt like his motivation was just abuse. But here it's kind of more like, maybe gets a little more sympathy that it's like, oh, he's just kind of strict and is, like, really trying to get Tsuna to toughen up. Still not the biggest fan, but I at the very least kind of, I don't dislike the character anymore.
Yeah, basically he's just kind of become, like, he exists and he's doing, his job as a teacher, basically, and, cool. good. So
I also found it interesting that like the way that some of the gag elements have kind of like still pop up in the more serious stretches, like, you know, the one I remember is just like Reborn showing up in like weird costumes or in weird places, but it's like done in a way that, like, you know, the joke is still like, it's just kind of like there for like the tonal balance, but also like, you know, I feel like what I could see being a strength of this series is a lot of those comedic elements, you know, calling back to those is sort of like calling back to that core of the series. And there was a line I really liked towards the end of the last conflict, which is just like, you know, this is what you're trying to come back to.
Yes.
And like why you need to survive, which is cool.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, of course, later. What I thought you were going to mention is, because I was just scrolling by it with, you know, Gokudera's in the hospital, so Bianchi comes in with her poisoned food, of course, so it's just, there's an example of, like, you know, there's more serious stuff going on, but, like, the characters are still, you know, retaining themselves, right? Even if, like, you know, especially in Suna's case, you know, he has to, you know, advance a bit, even if he's still, like, you know, he still has his insecurities and stuff, but he has, you know, he becomes more of a, you know, a fight boy, so, which he really was not at all in daily life. Like, you know, it was like, what, the swimming chapter where there's nothing close to him, like, combat. I mean, I guess he has, like, or getting stronger in that way, so, yeah. Oh, yeah, then, everyone goes off to, deal with, Mukuro. Oh, yeah, that's right, they start off with the animal dude. Oh, words. I guess, yeah, this is the first real, like, one-on-one, like, battle fight thing we get, so,
Yeah, I think maybe what's different about this arc compared to the one after this is, like, you know, here you still kind of get Yamamoto having the impression that, like, oh, this is a game, or, like, he's, like, not, like, you know, he gets more serious, but he still sort of is couched in that mindset of, like, you know, oh, you're really committed to the part or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. It's just interesting seeing that like, I feel like in this arc in particular, I can, like, feel that transition happening over the course of it, where it's like, you know, you still get the episodic conflicts and they work well as, like, one-on-one fights, but just, I don't know, it's just really interesting, and I'm not sure if, like, I have the words to describe why.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have the words either. But, like, I don't know, one thing I was going to mention is because, like, my thoughts on this arc and the sort of conflicts in it is I feel like, just, like, writing-wise, like, because, you know, I like looking at, you know, the layers of how, like, a fight works as an ideological conflict, and I've talked about it a bunch of times, where in this arc, I didn't get a whole lot out of most of the conflicts, but I still found there a, like, fundamental enjoyment of just seeing, you know, the transforming nature of the series. And just like I think the one fight in particular that I had that moment was where it was the one against the dude who had the two weird guys who were, like, stalking Haru and Kyoko, and it was very much like a comedy fight in a sense, because it was so weird and over the top, but you know, it's also still a battle, basically, like that sort of, you know, so I don't know, that was just that moment of just, like, seeing that sort of transition period, and you know, I don't know, it was just something I was noticing.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the good way to describe it. Like, I enjoyed this arc more for seeing how, like, the tone and the style of the series switches, whereas, like, the individual fights I don't think quite grabbed me in the same way up until kind of, like, the Mukuro fight, which I feel like is, if nothing else, it's really stylistically cool.
I actually, like, for me, I guess, like, the Mukuro versus Suna was definitely, like, the emotional, like, high point of this arc for sure. But, like, like, I don't know if I like it more than the Zanzis fight, but I definitely, like, we'll talk about it, but I felt pretty good about it, so, but getting towards there's the Bianchi gets her fight with I had to go back and look because they mentioned the purple and red poison, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on, the wedding? And I went back and it's like, oh yeah, that's where she can just poison whatever the fuck she wants, and it's like, you know, that's just you know, so it's like, the fight itself, like there's the sort of like different views on love and stuff, but it's just like seeing that gag stuff come in to play in this way was, I like that. I like it.
I thought it was goofy, and like it was goofy in in I don't know. I'm struggling on the word. I'll just say in an endearing way that like it was doing the ideological conflict of like, I think it was love and money or something like that.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, the reason Bianchi was fighting like that is because, Reborn was sleeping and she didn't want his nap to be interrupted. And it's like the power of love, huh? And it's like, well, that's a shonen battle right there.
Basically, yeah.
I think the other thing I noticed kind of flipping through the Yamamoto fight, I really kind of like the moment where like during the fight, he was sort of like protecting himself to, like he was before, where he didn't want to get injured because of baseball. But then like he like moves on from that and is willing to like sacrifice himself to like, or like he's willing to take damage in order to protect Suna and like keep everyone safe. And so and like the flashback to like that comedy chapter where it's like he was going to jump off the roof, and it's like at that point, he was willing to give up baseball, or like if he had to give up baseball, he would have given up everything. But now he's grown from that, and he's like, like I'm not the same person who would throw everything away for the sake of being able to play baseball or something like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's really cool. Because he's just I like it.
It was something about like, baseball is not more important than friendship.
Yes. Or he's found something he values more than just baseball, where it's like, because he's still putting, he's letting himself come to harm, but it's in a completely different way for a completely different reason. So, yeah. But yeah, now getting to the goofier fight with the two serial killers and Birds is his name, which is so I was even thinking about this. It's just like I really love goofy, not even just like battle shonen names, but even I've even gotten them in other series where it's just like they're using other languages and coming up with names that like don't make sense at all. But they're still they're funny, right? Like One Piece has a bunch of those. Like I was even just Page One. Like what is it? Like what? It's just it's not a real name, but it's like, yeah, he's Page One. He's just a silly dinosaur man, right? Or one of my favorites ever is I was watching Aikatsu, and they do this like show within a show thing where the whole episode is just, so Aikatsu is an idol anime for people who don't know, and in the episode they're like acting out a play or a drama or something, and that's just the whole episode is like other characters are watching this production that the characters did. So one of them was like a vampire hunter thing, and one character, Juri, her character was a vampire hunter, and they called her Julius Caesar Salad, which is so fucking stupid. And I love it. I fucking love it. It's like it's so funny because it's like it's so dumb. And it like, I love that shit. Like there's fucking, I don't think a character named Spaghetti has shown up, but I wouldn't be surprised if we found Spaghetti later. Like there's just just the Italian names, and then like, Birds here. His name's Birds. His parents had him, and they're like, yeah, they look outside, Birds, and boom, on the birth certificate. It's just it's just so absurd. I love it. But yeah, I also just like the moment where the others came in to rescue, Kyoko and Haru, where it's just like, again, it's just like, here's the gag stuff becoming, more serious in a sense. Even if it is like kind of a gag fight, like just the fact that like these serial killers with these very weird appearances are just following them for, at least a couple minutes, and no one's saying anything or reacting at all. Like it's just so dumb. And then like in the panel with Shamal, because he mentioned like something about protecting a cute girl, and there's just another lady who's unrelated to anything just giving him a weird look. Like I don't know, it's silly. I don't mind this one.
Yeah, I did not like the antagonist of this fight for people who have known the Nen Show long enough can I just not fan of like it's. I feel like I'm not as opposed to like there being some sort of like, I don't know, like, what am I trying to say? Like, I feel like perverted characters don't bother me quite as much as they used to, but a guy like this where it's just like it's over the top, which is, you know, maybe part of the humor, but like just like the nosebleeds and the just I'm just like
Yeah.
I did like, though, you know, I liked the part of the conflict with Tsuna where he, like, in the previous reading, it felt like he was often trying not to get involved in the conflict. And, like, I mean, even at the end of the reading now, he's still like, but I don't want to be in the mafia. But, like, you know, in this situation where it's like, when push came to shove and it's like his friends were in danger, he's like, all right, yeah, I'll sacrifice myself for their sake. And it's like, putting other characters first, where like he in the past was kind of always like he didn't want to be involved, and over the course of this arc as well, it kind of feels like he grows to that point where it's like, well, I can't, you know, like if everyone else is going to get hurt if I don't get involved, then, like, you know, he's willing to step up and do it, and it's a cool little moment here.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, no, I definitely like the way his arc goes throughout this part of the reading. But yeah, also I was looking at the when they actually beat up the serial killers, and I fucking on your server it was talked about how, like, cuz I just didn't mention it, but like Epin has it's I mean, aside from, I wasn't going to fucking mention Rama Man. I'm not going to bring up Kinnikuman. You don't like Kinnikuman.
Right, yeah.
But also, well, one thing I didn't notice until the pictures were posted is that, because I knew about Epin having the mahjong, thing, which it kind of slipped my mind. But I'm especially being more aware of it now because, like, I'm reading Kagi, and the sort of sequel written before, but taking place after manga 10, which in case you're not aware, it's by Fukumoto, the same author who did Kaiji, and it's a mahjong manga. And so, I basically just thought about it because the translation doesn't really get it across. But, when she fights the serial killer, she says Haku, Hatsu, Chun, Hai San Gen, which is, so the first three are mahjong tiles, and the Hai San Gen is a type of, I don't know if it's a type of hand or a type of, like, scoring, like, Mongon is a, like, I don't really know that much. But I've heard these terms a bunch of times reading Akagi. So it's just like, and she has the 1 pin through 9 pin on her forehead when she counts down, that's a suit of mahjong tiles, the pin, which are represented by circles. And of course, the Ramanman has he has the same symbol that's on the Chun tiles. So it's like, I don't know what the symbol means or why it's on Ramaman's head, because obviously, like, there's just a bunch of mahjong references with E-pin. Even in her name, it's like, I think it was even mentioned on the server where it's like that's how you pronounce the 1 pin, the first, the single circle. So I don't know, just I was noticing it, and it's also just kind of cool to see her fight as an adult, because, like, I was even talking about how, like, wow, she goes from being in this mafia world to just growing up and being a normal fucking human being, and but she still has that potential clearly. So it's weird. It's like, I feel like reading it, I didn't think about it much, but, like, looking back over it, I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of neat little things about this fight that I kind of am okay with. So, even if it's mostly just like a gag fight. So, but anyway, so the real Mukuro comes in, but they don't know that. And then he's followed up with the fake Mukuro, who they think is the real one. So, it's the kind of, I don't know, like, we as the audience were definitely aware of it, but interesting to keep it hidden from the characters so that they could have some interactions with Mukuro before they knew who he really was. So, and yeah, what did you think about Suna versus the fake Mukuro? Did you have any thoughts?
I remember liking the sort of conclusion of it, and I think specifically what got me most with this character was just, like, the way that the arc ended, and it was sort of like kind of tying into how Tsuna had been recruiting all these characters in the first stretch of the reading, where it's like, oh, here's in this case it's like, here's this guy who was sort of being taken advantage of by this antagonist, and had his identity basically stolen, and was not viewed for himself, and Tsuna actually like respects him, and I'm like, man, I hope this character comes back in a later conflict and like joins up with the squad or something. And then it's like at the tail end of the reading that happens, and I was hyped. As far as the fight itself, I'm not as, I don't know if I had as much to say on that.
Well, I thought it was interesting because, like, I think usually when Suna's used the bullet, it's always like this is the way that the way the conflict kind of gets resolved. So the way, like, because there's even that focus on not relying on the bullet too much. But what I liked about how this worked out is that, like, him using the bullet actually, like, he just got his ass beat, right? Like, trying to solve this conflict through violence, like, didn't really work out. And how he solved it was actually just by, like, obviously he still, like, beat up the fake Mukuro a bit, but he, like, because Suna's always looking at other people, right, and thinking about, like, the ways that they're strong or good. Like, he pays attention to those around him, right, because, like, he looks down on himself, so he looks at the positive things. He notices that the fake Mukuro, like, is, there's something going on there emotionally with him, right, where he's not, a bad person, right? So I just like how that element of, like, who Suna is as a person mattered more to the fight than the bullet, basically, and I like that. So
yeah, definitely, and especially the way it was sort of set up as being like the last of the dying will bullets, and how that sort of plays into the final conflict too, and also just the way that you said that of, like, Tsuna's able to see the good in people, and that was sort of always the case, even in the comedy chapters, because like, I always go back to that moment with Yamamoto because that's where I felt like it kind of clicked most for me. But, like, yeah, I guess I didn't think about this fight in that way as I was reading it, but it's a cool little progression.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing with Tsuna's intuition, I think, is a pretty cool thread, and I like how it's sort of established in this arc.
Yeah. Gokudera gets his rematch with the yo-yo guy. Kind of. It doesn't go well. But the way he, like, frees Hibari is, like, I don't know, just Hibari is kind of like Iki from Saint Seiya, where he just, like, comes in and it's like, let's go, like, that's how Hibari feels with me, I guess, because he's kind of, like, not part of the group. Like, he's an outsider who's edgy and kind of antagonistic. God, he is a lot like Phoenix Iki. Holy shit. But then when he comes in to help, it's like, let's fucking go. I don't know. He keeps having that effect for me. So,
yeah. I mean, there are a lot of characters that have just, like, really cool vibes, and definitely, like, what was the joke that came up last time? Something about Mathwiz aesthetic characters, and I think I had seen, like, people in the comments or on the server being like, oh, there could be a lot of those, and I feel like this reading was definitely that, where it's like Hibari's cool and Gokudera's cool, and just the way that Hibari is also sort of I don't know, I feel like I'm just bringing up thoughts as I think of them, but, like, how the sort of, like, the guardians are sort of laid out, where it's like Hibari being so standoffish and kind of, like, separate from the group in ways is, like, beneficial to them. And there's really cool stuff in here.
Yeah, no, I like the way that the rings come into play with how they tie to the characters, and even how that works into the fights. It's very cool.
I think the other thing about Hibari in this arc was I kind of liked the way that the weakness to Sakura petals was brought back, because it comes up in kind of like a gag chapter, and it might come up a second time, I don't remember, but it's definitely not, like, a major thing. So then, like, when this gets into a serious arc, and that is sort of, like, a big part of it, and something that I don't know if I remember the final fight well enough, but I feel like he isn't... No, it gets cured by the end. But I like how that kind of played into, the battles as, like, a mechanic, because it's like, even after the fact, when he's, like, doing the fighting, he's already sort of, like, beaten up because he was weak to the Sakura petals.
Right.
And it's another interesting example of the comedy element being worked into, like, the more dramatic arc, and it's neat.
Now, see, I've been trying to think of, like, if it's symbolic of something, because, like, well, I know what the Sakura is symbolic of. I was just trying to think of how it ties to Hibari's character. And I'm just wondering, like, oh, maybe what about Sakura? Like, or what about Hibari is weak against the Sakura petals, basically. And I don't know. This is just an idea that popped in my head. So obviously don't know where his arc goes, but it did, because he cares about the school a lot, right? Like he's the whole reason he's fighting these guys and working alongside Suna is because they're targeting students of his, fellow classmates, and and I just had a thought, because when I was thinking of Sakura, I was thinking of it as like, a beginning, right? Where it's like, you start school and the Sakura petals are going because it's April. And, but then I remember that it also ties to graduation and leaving. So I was wondering, so is it like, does he not like Sakura because he doesn't want school to end? Is that how his arc is going to go? Like, like, cause like if we're cause again, there's that whole like mafia versus the daily life, high school stuff. But ultimately, like, this peaceful period of their lives is something that's going to end, so which also is why they need to value it so much. So I'm wondering if, like, the Sakura sickness is, like, a sort of symbolic representation of that, as, like, it's all going to come to an end eventually, maybe. So, shit.
Oh, that'd be really cool.
And that also, my idea, because Mukuro is someone who's reincarnated, so there's also a sort of cyclical, like, start and beginning and end thing going on there. So, these are just coming to my head, and I'm just throwing them out there to keep in mind for later. But yeah, neat. I didn't think about these while I was reading, so
it definitely makes their little scuffle in the final fight more interesting in retrospect, if it's like, here are these potential two ideas that could sort of coincide.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I was thinking about during the reading was just how, like, I mean, the manga's called Reborn, right? And there's also literally the character Reborn. And, there's these babies who, I guess, like, the implication is that, they're reborn from other, they probably had former lives, basically. So I'm wondering, like, maybe it's already been brought up and I kind of forgot about it from the daily life stuff, but I'm just, like, because now you have Mukuro, who's, like, an antagonist of that, who just has reincarnated. So, I don't know. I was just thinking about this mechanic and how it works for the series and such. But, yeah. Oh yeah, I'm ready for the fight, and I'm Mukuro's illusions that kind of come into play later with Chrome. So, and because they're the Mist Guardians, so and illusions is kind of a thing there. But yeah, what did you think about? I'm still scrolling through it, but what did you think about Suna versus Mukuro? Because it's definitely a pretty long fight, all things considered, because there's all the possession bullet stuff.
I feel like I remember I feel like. It's less of a serious thought, but I feel like most of what I was thinking over the course of this arc was just like, damn, the art's going off. Mukuro is just like, he's the edgy boy, and he's just like I said, stylistically this fight is very cool, and there's probably more that that was just my first impression. I'm just like, this was where the art really started to win me over. I'm just like, wow. Especially, like, it almost in some ways kind of had like Sasuke vibes, I think, because of just like, the like bloody eye. And I remember like, similar vibes to like that shot of like Sasuke at the Kage Summit in the opening, where he's just like...
He's so edgy. I love Sasuke.
And there were moments like that with Mukuro where it's just like the bleeding eye and he's got like the sinister smile and like with like the aura and stuff making everything all spiky. It's just like like I feel like I'm going to be saying this a lot, that just like I'm at this point I feel like I really enjoy this series on like an art aesthetic level. And so it's like even if the story might like miss me at points, which, I felt like this reading was pretty good. But just even like going forward, like I feel like I'll always be to some level invested just because like I really like the art. And there were like some really good page layouts as well. And just like I feel like a lot of the intense moments of characters just battling each other and just the expressions and yeah, I feel like I'm going to be complimenting the art and the character designs a lot, and I'll try not to be too repetitive, but like this manga's pretty.
I mean, it is unfortunate that there's the scan quality is very iffy.
Yeah,
because that's especially matters for the artwork, and unfortunate.
Oh, but you know what I am realizing? The like I know that there's the mechanic of like the possession bullet, which, you know, also kind of factors into the stuff with the dying will, and like how I feel like I lost the thought I had there. Something about like the way the dying will is treated, and like I feel like there were some observations or predictions we had kind of made in the previous reading about like, well, your goal shouldn't be to die, you know, like you should be able to like tap into that power without that sort of thing. And I feel like this fight in some ways kind of
no, I think you're on,
because
it's like, you know, Mukuro, he's someone who has reincarnated, so there isn't a lot like, you know, he even asks Suna to kill him at one point because it's like, you know, dying doesn't mean as much to him, right? Where Suna, the whole thing with dying will, it's like, you know, do what you need to do while you're alive, or what you want to do while you're alive before you die, right? Like, so there's this, you know, very different like value of life and death, which also factors into like, you know, Suna wants to protect his comrades because they too have their lives and their things they want to do before they die. Where Mukuro will possess people and control them and sacrifice them, right?
Yeah, that was a regular conflict that came up in, you know, both of the arcs, that the antagonists have been regularly like willing to throw their disciples away or take advantage of them, or literally like possess them and use them. And like Mukuro very much did that, whereas like, you know, it's a recurring thing with Tsuna that like his motivation is like protecting his friends. And so you know, obviously in the later arc that comes up, but in this one as well, it's like, you know, Mukuro possessing all of these people and like doing everything he can to use other people for his benefit, whereas like Tsuna is, you know, like the opposite of that.
Yeah, like Mukuro's using the possession bullet to overwrite the will of his subordinates with his own, but Suna has I'm not sure what the ideal translation is. Like this one calls it the rebuke bullet for this chapter I read. Rebuttal, or yeah, I guess that makes, well, I don't know. I'm trying to think of like what word would just get it across the quickest, but you know, he's able to hear what all the people he cares about are thinking, you know, thinking and saying about him right at the moment.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so where Mukuro is overwriting the thoughts and opinions of others, basically, Suna is taking them in and like getting stronger for the people who, you know, do care about him, right? Like there's the like the one teacher bitching about his test that's slow, and it's like, yeah, she's angry because, you know, she wants him to do better, you know. And like, so it's like, you know, so, and then of course the friends just care about him, and you know, like Ryohei being like, yeah, he'll, you know, he's strong, or Haru, you know, saying she doesn't want him to give up, and like, you know, it's just like, I really like just the moment of him hearing all these, you know, words and just getting back on his feet and you know, finding his, you know, the gloves, and it's just it's so cool. Soon as good.
Yeah, and then he's a cool well, I guess he's a hot boy actually, because fire. No, I do think that is also a thread that I really like in this series, where it's like, as much as Suna is finding the good in other people, he's not seeing the good in himself, and all the other characters are, you know, seeing the good in him. And
yes.
Yeah, like really this coming up in the recommendations of like the Insecure Shonen protagonist video that I made, I like 100% get it at this point, and I think it's a really cool example of like you know, there are things that I don't think have quite clicked for me yet, like the fact that even after having this sort of growth, he still doesn't want to be in the mafia. You know, I see that there's like a thread of like, that's why I chose you, you know. So I'll just try to be like keeping an eye on that, and maybe it'll click for me in the next reading, or maybe someone will say something in the comments. And but yeah, it's yeah, there's a lot that I like about this manga at this point. And like I said, I feel like this is probably the most I've 180'd on something we've discussed between readings.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I'm thinking back where it's like Saint Seiya, you know, I feel like your opinion never changed that much. With Gintama, it kind of like, I think we were fine with it at the start, and then it just kind of kept going, and it kept going, and it kept going, and it just like, oh, you know, where Kinnikuman you were never into. So yeah, I can't, yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment of just like, you know, just to like, this is, like, I think I even said like, I don't like this manga, and now it's like, yeah, this manga's pretty cool actually. So, yeah, I gotcha. And also design-wise, I wanted to mention real quick because Suna, I think because his eyes are really big, and it's like because I saw later art with him with his just eyes partly lidded, and I thought, wow, the art changes so much. But now it's like looking at it here, it's just no, his eyes are so big that closing them part way when he's serious just looks so strikingly different, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's just something that stood out to me as far as wow, it's amazing how just a small change can stand out so much, I guess. So it's, I don't know, it's interesting. And yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I feel like, and I feel like this might just be another one of those manga where it's reading it. I feel like, or rather I should say discussing it, I feel like I appreciate some of this stuff more than the actual experience of reading it. I think, looking back on the first reading, I think maybe the issue I can sometimes have getting into manga is I feel like I can get past first impressions over time. Sorry. I don't know what was happening with my voice there. I feel like first impressions usually going through the first reading, I look back on it and it's while I can appreciate more in retrospect, and I definitely see why, people would find things interesting about it and maybe might have been underwhelmed by the discussion because it was sort of hard to approach it from that lens when we don't have the context.
Right.
And so I feel like sometimes with manga or anime, I'll sort of have the first impression will kind of leave not as good impact on me. And so it's sort of sometimes reading the battles or whatever, it's I might not get the full picture in the moment, or it might not resonate with me in that way. But then looking back on it, it's and then that even happens with, when we did the One Piece reading, with Wano.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. Where it's I feel like the only part where I was actually yeah, this is pretty cool was Act 1, and then talking about it, I was whoa, actually, hold on, and then that kind of carried through with the rest of the reading and especially the discussion. So where I just got more and more into it. So yeah. But anyway, wrapping up the fight, we get more Mukuro's deal where he and a bunch of other kids were being experimented on by the mafia. And he's hey, let's fucking destroy this world that, is shitty and terrible before they get taken off by the mafia. And then, yeah, it cuts back to the daily life where Yamamoto's playing baseball, Hibari's just chilling. And also Mukuro is still there, and he's in a child, and yeah, that happens.
Yeah, I remember, getting to that part, and, because, well, I mean, there was just a lot that was really cool about kind of the wrap up to this arc. You get that moment with Yamamoto doing the baseball and the boxing and stuff like that. But yeah, the way that, I guess it's also just part of that transition from comedy to battle, the way that it sort of keeps the former antagonist around and kind of foreshadows that, he'll be back. And like you said, the whole thing of rebirth, it's cool.
But yeah, finishing off that arc, because I think reading it back over again is because the ending, I think, in the Mukuro Suna fight was really strong for me, to the point that for some reason reading the Varia arc, even though looking back, I think the fights in the Varia arc are definitely overall much better. For some reason, just the way that the Kokuyo arc ended and being so strong with the last conflict and stuff, I was still fighting and I don't know which is better, even though now I okay, actually going through the arc again, even though there's more stuff I appreciate, I think Varia is just stronger overall. So for as much as I like the Tsunamukuro stuff, and the ending in general, so but yeah, still good arc, and nice to see the series going into its battle stuff in a cool way. But anyway, getting into the Varia arc, or I guess you could also call it the Scramble for the Rings arc or something, but that's probably too many words for the Nen Show title, so I'm not going to call it that. I'm going to keep it the Varia arc as I was suggested. So, but yeah, it starts out with Suna's dad coming home.
I thought it was so goofy when he's oh, you like men who are romantic, right? So just tell him that I disappeared like a star or something. And it's because it's always sort of, well, not always, but definitely a good bit of the time, like, or sorry, my brain's kind of getting away from me today. I think, like, I just think of, like Jing Freaks as like an example of like, oh, the dad who just sort of takes off and it's like, we don't know where he is or what he's doing. And like with this character, he sort of like deliberately kind of like gives that impression where it's like the mom is like, yeah, I knew what he was doing the whole time. But just that like he deliberately kind of kept Suna out of it is just, it's goofy.
Yeah, no, for sure. Which I guess is nice that, like even that the manga's become a battle series, like there's still, major characters being introduced with comedy first, I guess, where it's like, it's still like the series isn't going to stop being fun or funny because, like, and it really can, especially when like, you have like Lambo is one of the Guardians, right? A character who's inherently like this literal baby who, turns into an adult like fighter, right? So it's like, you can't just abandon the silly stuff inherent, so speaking of the devil, they go out shopping and who do they find fucking dicking around and being a goofball? Lambo. So
another thing that I'm just kind of because I wasn't paying too much attention to the chapter counts of like where the arc flipped over, but I'm realizing that like this last arc in the reading is like a good like 50 something chapters, which oh shit, that's right. That's what I'm here for. This is the grandiosity that I appreciate in shonen manga.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. I hadn't even thought about that. Like, even because I read it for a good few days, but I didn't even think of it like, yeah, this arc's 50 chapters. Like, I didn't, yeah, because I think the next one is even long. It's it's 150 chapters almost. So, but that's why we're splitting it into 2 readings. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But anyway, we get introduced to fucking I remember their names.
Isn't it like Squallow or something?
Squallow, I remember, yeah, but I was trying to remember the other guy who is like
Basil.
Basil, thank you. I was like, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, they're fighting, and because as it turns out, there's a Vongola family like civil conflict going on. And Squallow shows off that he's super fucking strong. Okay, see, normally the Reborn stuff didn't make me laugh, but I got to the end of this chapter where like Squallow just fucked them up, and they get the rings, and Suna's just like, what the fuck's going on? And then it's just like Reborn, he's like a potted plant, and he's like, this is bad. Like it's like he's at the fact that he's having like a serious like this, the comedy stuff in the comedy chapters is whatever, but him doing like having this comedy appearance but saying something serious after something serious just happened, but he just looks goofy like that. Like flipping through it, I was like, okay, that's kind of funny actually. So
I feel like Squallow is another one of those characters who just has a really cool vibe, because he's sort of like the Grimjow type where he's just very aggressive and loud and fighty and edgy and yeah.
But yeah, so Squallow takes the fake rings, and Reborn explains the succession crisis that the Vongola family is undergoing. Dino, of course, came in to help too. Then before they get off to training, Suna meets his dad, who is a fucking dork.
Yeah, it's like where does this guy rank on the level of like misguided or just sort of like I feel like the meme is like bad shonen dads. I'm trying to think of a different word. It's just like, like he's introduced like giving the kids like sake and getting them drunk and like being passed out and stuff. And it's so like, it's like we're, he, and the thing as well with like the, telling, or just acting like he had just disappeared and like keeping it a mystery from Suna. It's like definitely one of those father figures who is, what's the nice way to put it? He's, I can't think of the word I'm looking for.
I mean, the word I thought of was deadbeat, but that's not a nice word. So
that works.
Because you brought up Jing earlier, and it's like, I feel like that's appropriate, where he just kind of does whatever the fuck. And even within the organization, he's like supposed to be this outsider element who challenges keeps the group in check, but while keeping an outside perspective so as to not form particular biases, right? So and in the family, he's also like an outsider basically. But I guess like the idea is that he even if he's like obviously like okay, yeah, he's literally giving alcohol to children, so maybe not an ideal father figure, but I guess like the idea is he does know it's best for not like, I mean, because, yeah, like, Suna doesn't want this, but that's also why he's exactly what the Mongolia group needs, apparently, and both he and the Ninth recognize that, which is why Suna was made the heir, so, yeah. But yeah, then, we find out about the rings, and we get the little teases with everyone holding their ring, it takes a while before we actually fucking find out who, like, Chrome is introduced like literally like right before the mist fight, so it's like that one is a bit of a long payoff, all things considered. So because I was even wondering where it's like I wonder like because okay, we see Gokudera and Yamamoto, but I'm like, well, how many of these characters do we actually know? And the answer was basically almost all of them, and the one we don't know is still heavily connected to one we do know. But I don't know, it definitely has that, like, intrigue of it, because I think I've heard, like, some series, like, become more popular when they introduce, like, a bunch of characters at once. Like, I think Gintama, was probably the example I think of is when we were introduced to the Shinsengumi, where it's like, oh, here's all these fucking weirdos that are probably gonna have their own, like, apparently that saved the manga, where the manga was kind of like, oh, maybe it might get canceled, but then here's all these new characters, and people seem to like them, and then, it's still, like, the second longest manga we've read on this podcast, right? Like, Gintama was successful. But I think this is a different kind of intrigue, where it's like we get these sort of mysterious like roles to fill. I guess a similar example would be like the Warlords of the Sea or the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist, right? Where obviously like the Seven Swordsmen in particular are very different in that like we don't really see them at all, where with One Piece, like, you're kind of getting the warlords throughout the series, and it's like, oh fuck, Jinbei after so long, but this is kind of a shorter scale of that, where it's like, oh, I wonder who the Guardians are. Like, I had that effect reading it, where I was like kind of looking forward to, and like, ooh, I wonder which characters are going to be like Suna's Guardians, right? So I don't know, it's just a cool giving, holding back information that could have been given. Like, we could have seen all the characters and we would have known them, but the fact that it's hiding that, like, yeah, that's Hibari and Ryohei and Lambo, but I don't know, I like it. But anyway, we're told what the rings are, or what their deal is for each one, and a bunch of training starts. Well, I guess they did show a bunch of the rings right away. Never mind, it wasn't take it back, because yeah, like right chapter right after we see I guess I feel like I don't remember if they showed Lambo for a while, but we do see Hibari and Ryohei having rings like right away. So, and okay, so I do like this joke when Suna's training, and it's like, because like we're finding out like the former Vongola leaders, and then he uses the dying bullet to make him rest as if I were to die, which is just so like, it's so stupid. And I also just thought about how, like, I think on my notes I wrote but what did I write? Manga authors everywhere clamoring, because I could see, like, god damn, they would definitely want some fucking rest. I don't know, I just thought it was funny. I don't think I have anything to specify about the training itself, I don't, it's cool.
I did like the sort of dynamic with Dino and Hibari, where it's sort of like it's the two cool, strong characters, and they just like can't see eye to eye, and they're just sort of it's like they're trying to outfight the other, and it's cool.
Mm-hmm. I also thought it was neat that Ryohei's training isn't actually like getting stronger, it's actually cooling down, which can be important to remember. I think that rest can be as important as the rest of stuff. So
yeah, because like he was the kind of character where when he was shot with the dying will bullet, nothing really changed. So
yes,
I feel like that's a cool I guess flip side to that.
And yeah, so then you got Yamamoto with his dad and Gokudera with Shamal again. I feel like that keeps happening. They kind of get paired up a lot, I feel like. And then Suna gets... Well, because Basil's, I guess, of the characters who use the dying will bullet, he's definitely, like, the least important. Like Basil's, I don't know, I don't really have thoughts on him. He's just kind of there. So
Yeah.
you know, he is what it is what it is. As far as names go, because there's it's spelled like Col. The guy who's training Ryohei, because like he's also kind of got like a military theme, so it's like I want to read it like Colonello, but I also want to think of it as like Colonello, basically, because like Colonel.
Yeah,
is
that's
like,
how I had been reading it, because I thought, yeah, like
okay,
Colonel.
yeah, gotcha.
But
it's
I
just
mean,
like
could be wrong.
yeah, it's because that's well, especially like thinking about how like loan words work in Japanese, where it's like they sometimes are pronounced how they're spelled. It like with Japanese syllabary is that how the words? I don't know. Like I the one I think of is like I hear in Ava they pronounce energy, but they pronounce it like energy because like well gi, so it's like okay, that's closer to how energy is spelled, but like it's pronounced with a J sound in English, so or it would be, you know, so it's just like an example of like, you know, so I've seen that happen, so I don't know how they would say it in the anime basically, but yeah, I definitely want to read it as Cornello because I think of the military, like you said. So,
I feel like I also wouldn't be surprised if it was kind of one of those names that would have like a double meaning potentially.
True. Because yeah, there might be wordplay there. Because like an example I thought of was in one of the Kamen Rider series. There's Kamen Rider Razor. And which I think it's meant to be a pun with both laser and like razor, as I think razor's a brand of motorcycle, and this character also turns into a motorcycle. So sometimes you get puns like that where with the L's and the R's where it's like it uses both of them. So you know, stuff like that can happen. Or it might just be another kind of pun entirely. I don't know. But anyway, Zanzis finds out that the rings are fake. Oh yeah, I guess there's this earlier incursion of the Varia before the fighting actually starts. I kind of forgot about it, actually.
It was cool when like the main characters kind of like showed up and, you know, they had the group pose and it's like, yeah.
Yes. And then we get the first meeting with the Zanzis. But of course Iemitsu stops it before it can actually come to a head. Because this is a tournament arc. Not an official tournament arc, but it basically. Well, because I even remembered, I forget if I mentioned it earlier, but during the previous arc, there was the mention of like how the Vongola group doesn't fight in like 2-on-1 conflicts or anything, which I just was thinking about how like, you know, the Vongola, because there's also the rule about how like, you know, the defeated become subordinates to the one who defeated them. So it's just like the Vongola family has rules that really fit a battle series well. With, you know, focus on one-on-one fights and then the defeated becoming, you know, allies basically. So I don't know, just something I was thinking about. And so here you have this whole setup with the halved rings for the succession conflict. That is just there it is. There's the scramble for the rings.
I feel like this sort of conflict really gave me like I feel like I really could see kind of like the Kinnikuman sort of like just like when the two judges show up and they're there to like explain the rules and like it feels like a lot of the conflicts are kind of like, you know, here's this rule that's pre-established but we're explaining it now, and then like here's this conflict with all these, you know, set pieces and stuff, and like I don't know, maybe there's more to it than just that. It was just a vibe I got.
I mean, well, because I mean there's already been a Kinnikuman reference with, you know, Ipin. But like, because now that you mention like the having these conflicts with different like stage setups, it's like that now you mention it, that's very very Kinnikuman, like specifically like I can't. think
the
of
different
a lot of
stage setups is probably the better way to.
Right, because like you had like the sun battle has all these really hot lights, and you know, the rain battle is in this part of the building that's flooding with water, and it's like, you know what, Kinnikuman did that kind of shit too, like the one, especially I remember there was like the 4-tiered like ring match basically. Like that, and they just did wacky shit, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's not a series I was expecting to influence Reborn. But I mean, I'm not saying that. Well, I mean, there's been at least the one reference, so I don't know about influence, but it's also not like you know, I can't think of a lot of series that like have that sort of like very constructed you know, environments in that way, where it's like, I mean, like some like, or at least not like this, like, because with One Piece there's like environmental factor into battles, like especially like in Davy Backfight where you had Foxy's ship with all its traps and shit, but that was very much like, that was very different. It was only like one fight too, so it's not really the same, you know. But yeah, that's that's a fair connection, I guess. But yeah, I also like how after that you get the, sort of some downtime a bit, like calm before the storm with everyone at school kind of just, lying to Kyoko about what's going on, and just, a bit of, like I said, appreciation of the daily life that they have that they want to protect, basically. So
yeah.
So anyway, we're finally into the fights. So the first one is the sun match between Ryohei and I'm not gonna remember these fucking names.
I like the way that the group huddle is sort of like incorporated over the course of this arc, where initially it's like Gokudera and Tsuna are very like against it, and Tsuna's like, I don't want to be here. But then it's like eventually, with like the connections to like the friends and the camaraderie, like it eventually becomes something that like he's initiating, and it's like it's a cool thread.
Yeah. And like the way they like forcibly incorporate like edgy boy Hibari in later is fun. Where it's like, I don't know, yeah, it's good. I like how it comes up. So anyway, I guess what did you think about the first fight with the Sun Guardians?
Don't like the antagonist character here.
Yeah.
Just felt very much like the kind of stereotypical, like, creepy gay guy. Like, they talk about, there aren't many that his tastes, and it's like, he's always saying, like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, it's just, it feels like it's definitely portrayed to be, like, creepy and uncomfortable.
For sure,
and not a fan.
No, yeah. Aside from that, like, it's, I guess it's, I don't know, I think it's probably one of my least favorite of the fights overall, but, like, because it's fine, and I guess, like, because I do like how you have the recurring thing where it's like, okay, what is this Guardian? Like, what's their deal? And how does that factor into the fight? Where it's here, it's like the Sun Guardians, put their bodies on the line. So, fucking, I just had his name. God damn it, the fucking Luceria. Thank you. Where he has these metal protections and stuff that Ryohei ultimately breaks through. So he's protecting his body with outside forces or with outside objects, basically. Where Ryohei, just sends it, and he's the one who's really putting his body on the line. So he's the one who comes out, and it's like yeah. I just kind of like how all the things come into play. So because even with the ones who lose, it's like that also factors in. To their loss, basically. So, and I also wonder how it's going to come into play with, like, their arcs going forward for the ones who lost, because, like, they're not, quote unquote, the ideal of that Guardian, if that makes sense. So, I don't know, just something I just thought of. Maybe it's more than I thought, because they do become the Guardians by the end of the arc. So, but anyway, so then we get the Lambo, the Thunder Guardian. And they do answer my question that I had before, where it's like, because I was wondering, like, how does the time travel shit work? And the answer is like, well, the 10-year bazooka, it picks an alternate future, basically. So like, the Lambo he talks to at the dining table is like, yeah, I literally don't remember any of this shit. So yeah, I could battle tomorrow and fucking die. But then you also have, like during the fight, you have the 20 years later Lambo with the horn that Gokudera marked. So hey, this Lambo did grow up to be a cool dude who was really strong. So trying to think about any specific fights on the thought itself, maybe. But what about thoughts on the fight that I had? I guess like the only thing I really had to say is because like I did kind of like I just kind of like laughed when 20 years later Lambo appeared, because it's just kind of like. I mean, I didn't expect it because, it's not a thing that we've seen before, obviously. And I guess in itself, like, he's just, I guess the design's kind of cool, but just like the level of like escalation just coming out of nowhere, like, and even just like the visual of 10 years later Lambo, like, placing the bazooka against his head and crying, and then it just, I don't know, just like something about it made me laugh. And then, of course, as for the fight itself, like, if the Thunder Guardian absorbs the damage, then, like, ultimately Lambo lost because Suna had to protect him. So, yeah. It was fine. Suna's cool.
Yeah, I feel like the thing at the end where, like, you know, Suna is willing to kind of throw away his match for the sake of, like, you know, again, like, wanting to protect his friends, and whereas Zanzis is so willing to sacrifice his disciples.
He's such a cunt about it too. Like he'll literally just bust out laughing when one of his dudes loses. Like, fuck you, man. Oh yeah, and I guess I was wrong because I remember saying that Longchamp doesn't show up again, but there was like an extra chapter where he's in briefly. So yeah, I have a feeling he's not going to show up again, but I could be wrong again too. But yeah, Zanzis doesn't like the ninth head of the family. He also says that he can kill everyone at any time since he's got the Sun Ring due to Suna's disqualification. Or not Sun Ring, the Sky Ring. See, I guess in my head I think of the sun as like the center. So it's like, yeah, that's and also fire. But no, it's the boss ring is the Sky Ring because that's got all the sky possesses all of the weather basically. So anyway, then we get the next fight, which is the storm battle, Gokudera versus Belphegor. What did it say about the storm? Sorry, I'm trying to find out what it said about the Storm Guardians and what their deal is. Oh yeah, I guess fierce winds that never stop was the thing. So persistence basically, and which I did like how that factored into the fight with like because like the way Gokudera's his bombs they can change trajectory if they miss, kind of like gives me a perspective, you know, or perspective, persistence vibe, because you know it's like the, you know, fail try again kind of aspect. It actually, you know what, want to know what this fight reminds me of a little bit? Luffy versus Katakuri, where you have you know, like you have the main character, like because it's like Snake Man, right, where like Luffy bounces his fists off the air to redirect his punch, and then Gokudera has the bombs that he can redirect them when they miss, and you know, fighting against someone who's super talented and you know, hasn't really known failure, I guess. So
yeah,
just hey, maybe get a couple connections to that, but obviously like this would have been published way earlier. So did you have any thoughts on the fight?
I mean, I guess I thought that like the conflict with like Gokudera not being willing, like he shouldn't be so willing to throw his life away was interesting.
Yeah, because he ultimately loses because, like, you know, if the storm is the one who kind of keeps going and persists at the end of the day, like, he pulled back, right? Because, he, you know, he was trying to protect his life for, you know, Suna's sake. So, like, he's a good fit for Suna, but he's not the Storm Guardian, necessarily. Not yet, I suppose. Which will, you know, interesting considering going forward. Especially because he has this whole thing about, like, wanting to be good enough for Suna, basically, because he really looks up to Suna, even though Suna, you know, doesn't look to himself, look at himself very positively, you know. So, like, you know, Gokudera failed here, so
character parallels. He, you know, sees himself as like inferior to Tsuna, and that like he has to you know, try to be good for his sake, whereas like Tsuna feels inferior to everybody else.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why he's the right hand, because they are similar.
Mm-hmm. I like how Hibari comes in after and is like, what the fuck are you doing ruining my fucking school? Like, he's just pissed off, as he always is. Hibari good.
The way that, like, the wires and the bombs sort of came together was pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they had neat fighting styles, and I think this is the fight that I started to realize how it's like, you know, it has this variance without a shared power system, and I was starting to think like, you know, oh, this is kind of cool. And yeah, it also works with like, because you know the way Gokudera would sort of use his opponent's thing, like, you know, he's riding his opponent's wind basically, which I thought was neat. So yeah, before we get to Yamamoto's fight, there's mention of the ninth boss. Being, you know, missing or captured, and of course we get a bit of Squallow's backstory where he could have been the boss of the Varia.
I also like the little interaction where it's like Hibari is gonna like go wild and fight a dude, and then Yamamoto just kind of steps in, and it does the moment where it's like, oh, he moves so fast.
Yes. Good. Oh yeah, and it turns out that Yamamoto's dad has a bamboo sword. That's kind of because like Yamamoto had the baseball bat that turns into a sword, but his dad has a bamboo sword that turns into a regular sword. So
yeah, I thought some of these fights I thought were really cool as far as kind of like the idea of rebirth, or sort of like the, you know, the shonen theme of like passing the torch, of how like there are these abilities, you know, between like Yamamoto's sword style and Tsuna's like the dying will 0 point stuff. I guess to some extent with Gokudera and like trying to, you know, like kind of perfect the technique that Shamal was trying to teach him. Although I don't think I quite made the connection with that one as much, or maybe that one's still developing. But like, you know, the whole thing of like passing down a technique and then improving on it, you know, in the next generation. I mean, you know, the whole idea of rebirth, that like the whole thing with like the sword style is that it, you know, like it doesn't, like something about the way that it's passed down and continually added on, and it doesn't die out. I don't know. I thought it was an interesting little connection between some of the powers.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Especially, well, because yeah, I guess we don't know that much about a lot of the antagonists, but they, you know, they have their own thing, and they don't seem to value other connections much. Like I think Swallow's backstory, he literally cuts down like the best swordsman in the I think what was it? Or hold on. I was just there. Oh yeah, he defeated the former boss of the Varia. That was it. But anyway, then they start the rain battle in the gradually flooding arena. So yeah, what did you think about Squall versus Yamamoto? Because I like this one.
Yeah, I like the conclusion to the fight a lot, and also like not just in the sense of like, you know, adding on to what came before, but also the way it like reincorporates his sort of like baseball roots into like a sword fighting thing. So it kind of ties together how he had like the bat that would transform into a sword, and now this is like more of a fusion, or like a synthesis of the two.
Right, like kind of the past working into the future with the, you know, Yamamoto's personal, like, you know, because he, you know, he's still doing his baseball, and that's like, you know, because he's got the kendo, he's got the baseball, and now he's got his sword play, and yeah, he's sort of synthesizing them all together for his sort of final techniques, which is really cool. And then you have the angle of like, you know, because the Rain Guardian is the one who, or it's like they translate it as like they square out the battles and wash away the blood. So they're all, you know, which is so perfect for how the fight wears out, because, you know, Squall won't give up his grudges and his hatred, where Yamamoto is like willing to forgive, and like ultimately like he tries to save Squallow's life, right? Like he doesn't want grudges to form, right? And that's kind of what the Rain Guardian does, where they sort of prevent further conflict in the way that they, you know, protect the family, basically. Which Yamamoto is perfect for. So of course he becomes the Rain Guardian.
Yeah, because there was also like the whole thing of like, oh, to defeat me you need to like surpass all styles, or a particular one. Like you can't just rely on one set thing. Whereas like Yamamoto was so steadfast in like, I inherited this from my father, and so I believe in, you know, his statement that like, you know, it's flawless, it's unrivaled, and like, yeah, he just, you know, I feel like, I don't know, to some extent it is kind of goofy that it's like, oh, it's this sword style that is, you know, it's built upon like constantly changing and having these different forms, but it's also like, it's very shonen in that way, and it's cool.
Yeah. So, yes, there might be more we have to say about the fight, but I realized that also in the fight we get the second popularity poll, which is the hero-villain one. And I guess seeing the gap is interesting, because it's like, so Suna is number one as the heroes with a little over 5,000, and then Hibari is number two at 4,600, and then you have Mukuro at number one for the villains with 9,500, and then number two is the shit, I forget his name, Lucia I forgot, but Lancia, thank you, I got the wrong syllable. Yeah, the fake, Lancia at 2,800. So it's like, there's just such a huge gap. Like, Mukuro is so fucking...
Yeah, like, I couldn't tell if that was saying that he is the most popular character in the series, or if because of the hero and villain split, like, he just didn't have as strong a competition.
For sure. I think it's, well, yeah, I mean, I think that's, because, like, looking at the vote spread, yeah, I think it's definitely just that, like, yeah, so I don't know how he would rank if they were all voted for, because he might. But still I mean, be the
he's clearly a really popular character. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he just is the most popular. And I mean, like, even popularity aside, I do think it's really cool how he's brought back, and
yes,
it's handled in a really interesting way as well. Like, I would have been fine with him just coming back as himself, but the twist to it is also really cool. And it's like, yeah, if he's a popular character, then it makes sense that he'd, be back.
Yeah, for sure. Because I kind of brought it up earlier too, but we'll talk about it for sure when we get to the mist fight. But yeah, Yamamoto's fight is really cool. I don't think I have any more to say about it, actually. And of course, Zanzis is like, Squallow's like probably one of the guys he had the longest bond with, and he's still just like, he just immediately is like, oh, fucking pathetic trash. Fucking, what a piece of shit. But anyway, it cuts to Italy, and they find who turns out to be the fake ninth head. So yeah, I was flipping through the pages and I fucking forgot about the Mist Guardian's got his like fucking snot prediction fortune telling shit, and I noticed the CD, and I'm pretty sure when I read it I was like, haha, Craftsdwarf, funny, and but then now looking at it again I'm like, oh, it's Chrome Dokuro, duh.
Yeah, I never thought back to that afterwards, but that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a gag, and it happens, and I move on, and then yeah. But yeah, we also of course see Mukuro's former goons showing up again, and then Chrome shows up. It's her. What a twist! It's not actually Mukuro, or is it? Introduces herself by kissing Suna. Okay, sure. Because yeah, I'd seen her design before, but obviously she didn't show up in the last reading because it's kind of hard to forget the eye patch in particular.
Yeah, I had never seen her before, so it's like it's I really like the design in that it's basically just like Mukuro, who already had a great character design, but just gender swap it, and I mean it's good.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've already talked about it, that I really like the way that the way that Mukuro is brought back, where it's sort of like it's like a sort of codependency type thing, where it's like she needs sort of his spirit to live, and like he needs her to actually have access to like the outside world,
right? And like it's just so like out there and bizarre, like the fact that like her organs aren't real, I guess, and like they're illusory, which is just I guess such an exaggerated take on like perception of the world, being the world, I guess. And just like it's because I mean I did just read Toriko, and it also kind of does something like that, but I won't go into detail, but it's just I've seen that kind of thing in other manga, but it's just it's so like, again, it's just so off the wall and interesting that like, because especially after seeing that popularity poll where it's like, oh, Mukuro's the most popular, got the most votes on this poll and is one of the most popular characters in the manga, if not the most popular. And so it's like, oh, the author just brought back this character, and it's like, yeah, but she did it in such a wild way that it's actually like, well, because I think even if like the editor was like, hey, maybe you can find a way to bring Mukuro back, like Amano Akira had to sit there and think about how she could do it in an interesting way, right? That's creatively fulfilling, other than that, because like it also has to make sense to the story, because Mukuro is captured and taken away. I don't know what the deal with the kid was, thinking back on it, like because there was the kid who was clearly hit with the possession bullet. I guess he was just like still trying to find a suitable host, perhaps. And like that was before he found Chrome, maybe. But yeah, it's just such like, yeah, we get the whole flashback. With her being basically completely abandoned, and sort of connecting to Mukuro in a way, like he's, oh, perhaps we're the same kind of person. And of course the Mist is whole like what is it, something to nothing and nothing to something, where it's like here are these two people who are nothing, and we're coming together and becoming the Mist Guardian. So it's pretty wild.
I feel like it also ties into the general like theming of sort of, in a way, like the whole thing of unity, because it's like where the other team, it's a lot of like Zanzis being willing to sacrifice his people. Like, here's an example of a character who's like a combination of two characters that at this point at least, like, can't be separated, so they have to rely on each other. So it's maybe not the same as what the other characters are doing, but I do think it is interesting in that way.
Yeah, and what you also made me think about is just how, like, the relationship is different than the one Mukuro had with his former, subordinates, right? Like, he's still taking over her body, but it feels like it's a little more mutual rather than, like, symbiotic rather than parasitic, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Where, so he's kind of changed a bit, and he's not, like, completely just, like, he could easily, like, just see her as a pawn and a way to evoke himself on the world, but instead, like the way he's like, oh, we're kind of similar, and, like, it's like, you did well, my cute little Chrome, right? Like, there's more recognition of her in that way, like, because she did fight at first, and, she didn't, she got defeated, basically, but, like, he's coming in to help her, and, so it's just, it's neat.
Yeah, so it's like the possession he was doing before, but now there's a twist on it and sort of like a progression.
Right, exactly. Oh yeah, I also compared their relationship to sort of, it's like, I might have talked about this to you before privately, or maybe I forget where I brought it up, but it's because it's Ultraman, where it's like in the first Ultraman series, the main character Hayate, his fucking jet crashes into a UFO, and Ultraman's like, ah, shit, sorry, dude. You basically died, so I'm gonna, heal you up and take over your body, basically. So like that, so the whole series is actually like from like Ultraman is pretending to be Hayato. I forget what his name is. Fuck. And so, but like he's healing him in the background, basically. So this is kind of like sort of a similar, like, I mean, there's a bunch of different kind of like host, Ultra relationships throughout the franchise, and I just thought it, like, I don't know, it's not a reference or any, it's just like a connection I made. He does not turn like 50 feet tall when she becomes Mukuro, but it is what it is. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. But yeah, I guess this is also the first fight we see with one of the Arso Boleno. Arco Boleno? Arso Boleno? I think it's Arso Boleno, but I have no idea how I'm butchering that, because I probably am. But yeah, this is the first time we actually see one of them fight. And he gets wrecked. Mukuro too strong. But yeah, I don't think I had any more thoughts on the fight, so... Oh, and I also thought it was interesting the way that after the fight, Suna is thinking of the image he saw of Mukuro trapped in prison, basically, and Reborn's like, don't forget what he's done, basically, so that should be neat, because, Mukuro, I guess he's going to through Chrome, he's going to continue to be a recurring character, so...
Yeah.
Oh yeah, then we get the build-up to Hibari's fight with the robot. This is just, I don't know, like, because again I mentioned the Phoenix Iki, but then the way the cloud fight goes, where it's just like he just one-shots the robot, like, after all that build-up, and it's like, oh yeah, we just fought this prototype, but that's the real one that's really strong, and Hibari just one-shots it, and it's like, okay, yeah, I like, fucking boring. What was it? I think that was the manga stream translation of Kenpachi fucking up that one dude in the Fullbring arc, where it's just like, it's same kind of energy of just like a one shot, just like all after a bunch of build up and then just boom, and it's cool. And I just had that reaction where it's like, fuck yeah, Hibari. He's just cool. And yeah, also does I like the, again, One Piece does it a lot with the Marines especially, but having the coat over the shoulders and not being worn, it just looks really cool.
Yeah.
And Hibari does that. Yeah. But yeah, even though Hibari is so strong, he fights Zanzas and it doesn't work so well. But then we're getting into Suna versus Zanzas, which of course starts out with Zanzas, because the robot had the ninth body in it, and Suna, oh no, you killed the ninth, you monster. Fucking piece of shit. I'm trying to think, what did you think about the fight overall? Because I thought it was pretty good as well. Probably my favorite fight so far in the series, maybe?
You're talking like not this first part, but the fight
the
proper.
Whole fight overall, yes.
Yeah, it was really cool, and like the way that the Guardians were worked into it as well, I thought was pretty neat.
Right, and like, because they were even talking about before the fight how, like, you have Suna's extraordinary ordinariness, where it's like, what makes him normal is, special. in its own way, because like, because Zanzis is, he's this like, because he thought he had this blood relation that he didn't really have, and then when he found out that it was a lie, he was just possessed by this hatred of having that taken away from him, because he thought that he was stripped from what he really wanted to be. Where it's like he still could have potentially supported the organization, but he gave up basically, and fell to his hatred and become something uncontrollable pretty much. Where of course Suna doesn't want the mafia at the end of the day. So in that way he's like better for it, I suppose.
Yeah, that like he's putting his comrades above, the like the institution that he's a part of, or the trying to think of another way to describe it, but basically that.
No, yeah, I gotcha. Because Zenzis would probably burn everything down if he had the opportunity, if it suited him, basically. But it's interesting that that you have one who cares too much and one who doesn't care that much, and it's the one who doesn't care. And it's not that he doesn't care, but he's not interested. He's not obsessed with it. Yeah, and yeah, like you were saying, the way the Guardians work into it is really cool. With like, especially like when Hibari just fucking like fights through the poison and just figures and then it's just like, because I guess what I took from that is that like all of Zanzis' Guardians are ultimately reliant on Zanzis because they're in service to him and he's the strongest, so they just let him, where in Suna's case, because not even just because he's weaker, but also like they respect him, and they're like, basically what sort of happens is because you had like there's like a self-sacrifice angle with like Gokudera protecting Suna at the start of this reading, but now it's like you have everyone like fighting on their own to protect each other, basically, and so there's a mutual protection going on. Like Suna's sort of able to like just focus on fighting Zanzis on his own because his subordinates can protect themselves, basically. So it was cool. And yeah, of course, before you fight the fight, you get the the group huddle where it's like the limit is that anyone within a 10-meter radius is considered in the circle, and it's like he already gets like he's that's pedal with him like facing away and like ticked off with a little cloud of frustration above his head. It's cute. Trying to flip through and see if there's anything else I had to mention or forgot to mention through the fight.
Oh, also just the part where he just like catches the knives. Like, the other guy is using the tricks with the wires, and he's just like, well, that's boring.
Yep. Oh, yeah, and I guess there was also the angle of the fight where it's like Zanzis is sort of taking these elements from the previous heads. Like, he's got the guns and the flame. From the 2nd and the 7th, I think. Where Suna, of course, is like, like he's combining things from the past. But Suna's making, it's kind of like the Yamato thing where Suna's kind of making something, and going further with his own version. Like because he's outside, he can do something that no one from within the organization ever did, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the 0 point is kind of neat because like now he's got fire and ice capabilities, which is cool. Literal fucking goddamn pun not intended. Fuck.
I feel like I missed the pun in there.
Oh. Ice is cool. It's cold. It's
yeah, and like the whole thing of it's how they described it as like it's the reverse or the inverse, and like the plus and minus and whatnot. So like the sort of inverse of fire being ice, I think is cool.
Oh yeah, I remember another thing about Zanzis is I vaguely remember way back on the Nen Show with Fairy Tail, we got a comment saying that like Laxus was basically like a ripoff of Zanzis, and now reading like as I already had some people who were like, no, that's not really accurate, and now reading it, I'm like, how the fuck did it even come to that? Like they're not really similar at all. Well, like especially because one thing I just thought of is like the way that Zanzis kind of like, even though Suna like cools him down, he kind of just doesn't. Like, he doesn't change. He doesn't give up at all, basically. Like, he needs to be sealed away again, Like, he's complete. He's a fire that won't stop, basically.
Yeah.
And, where it's, like, compared to, like, Mukuro, who did, he's now literally allied with Suna, basically. Like, Zanzis is like, no, he refuses to give up, basically. And yeah, you got the Lancia coming in to help. So yeah, cool arc. We're almost to the end. I think all that's left is the wrap up. But let me look and see if I had anything else to say about the fight that I missed. Oh shit, that's right. I guess because like the Ninth Head also like believed in Zanzis and what he could do, but Zanzis didn't believe in himself because he didn't have the blood. Where like Suna doesn't believe in himself either, but other people believe in him, you know, so he can accept that. And I was like, oh yeah, they're similar in it to, and in the end,
believing in the you that believes in me.
Right. So
yeah. Whereas like because Zanzis was like, oh, I'm not, you know, actually related by blood, so you know, like I can't. You know, feeling like betrayed by that when it's like the blood wasn't really what mattered.
Yeah, blood doesn't matter. Woo, let's go. Nen Show staple. They have just really good contrast and conflict, and it's cool. I like it. And yeah, the way it ends off with just like they have a celebration where it's like, oh yeah, we won the sumo tournament, and you know, but just like. Yeah, the daily life that they're trying to protect is just, you know, they're these peaceful days, and of course it ends with a little cliffhanger lead into the next arc where Reborn is just vanished, which could immediately turn into a joke, but also the future arc is the longest arc in the series, and I feel like it's the one I'm the most curious about. Not that I'm not curious about the other two, but I don't know. I'm just something about like future. It sounds interesting to me. I don't know, like, is it going to involve time travel shit? I have no fucking idea.
Yeah, and obviously, like, the stuff with the 10-year bazooka and the, you know, that being, like, something that, the whole thing of, like, time and, like, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Trying to think, but yeah, overall, I, you know, fun reading, really strong, cool stuff. You know, not the most consistent, I guess, but I think, like, you know, it's still really cool coming off of the comedy stuff and seeing, you know, all these things like click into place. And, you know, there's some interesting stuff here for sure. I'm digging the series. It's fun. And I'm looking forward to the next reading. Any final thoughts, or shall we just wrap it up?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to more. Like I said at the beginning, definitely grew on this manga a lot as this reading went along. And I'm definitely at the point where I'm like, yeah, this is a good fucking manga.
Let's go. So anyway, the next reading is first of the future arc is 136 to 218. So gonna be a nice chunk of chapters, about half the arc. I think a little bit more, but so yeah, that does it. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.